This is Open Parameter Podcast, conversations about the intersection of life and art with artists from around the world. Come chat with us on our Discord server and get monthly early access to episodes by becoming a supporting member today at patreon.com/openparameter. Welcome back to Open Parameter Podcast. Del Cook speaking. That was an excerpt from a piece titled Distant Sea, composed in 2020 by my guest today, Michael Kropf. Michael Kropf is a Michigan-based composer whose work deals with hidden emotions and evocative places. He has collaborated with Marin Alsop, the Telegraph Quartet, the San Francisco Conservatory Orchestra, and the Aspen Contemporary Ensemble. Michael completed his master's degree in composition at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music in 2016, where he won first prize in the Highsmith Orchestral Composition Competition. Michael was born in Danbury, Connecticut, and received his Bachelor of Music degree from New York University. His teachers and mentors have included David Conte, John Adams, Justin Dello Joio, Luboš Mrkvička, and Youngmi Ha. He is currently pursuing a doctoral degree in composition at the University of Michigan. To have him on the show. Michael, how are you doing? It's been like 3 years since we saw each other.
Yeah. Thanks, Del. It's great to be here, and I'm realizing I'm missing a very important teacher on that list, which is Kristen Custer, who I'm currently studying with at University of Michigan, and she's just been an incredible mentor. So I felt like I had to shout out to Christy. It's we hung out one night at the Aspen Music Festival.
Right.
One of the many nights that I hung out with people there, and it's great to see you. Even though you're a little box on my computer, it's still really awesome to catch up.
Yeah, it's funny because I was I was researching who I wanted to have on the guest for the May lineup, and I was actually I was looking up to see what Matt Albert was doing, because Matt Albert used to teach at Meadows, where I did my undergrad. Now he teaches up at Michigan, where you are, and I was seeing like, well, what's Matt Albert doing, and I saw can't remember how I came to it, but I saw Distant Sea, the video, which was incredibly well produced, and then I scrolled down, like, who's the composer of this? And I'm like, why does that name sound familiar? And then I looked up your website, and I went, I know this man. And I went, I'll interview him. Let's do that. I want to catch up with this guy. So
that's awesome.
So did you let's see, you were already done with your master's at San Francisco when you were at
Yes.
Aspen. So were you
Hmm.
already at Michigan when you were in Aspen, or was that sort of a gap year for
No.
you?
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking about going back to school yet. It's actually the experience at Aspen made me want to go back to school because
Mm,
it was like being in that environment surrounded by a bunch of students who are all excited and just that kind of energy made me be like, I should apply to school again and go back to school. So yeah, that year I was just living in San Francisco. And the the winter after that, I decided to go back to school.
so that would have been winter of 2019.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds right.
Wow, what a time to start a doctoral program. Um,
Yeah, it feels a long time ago now, 2019.
yeah, I usually ask this later on, but I mean, how's the pandemic? I mean, starting a doctoral program like right before pandemic starts. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was. There's this big transition of moving to a new place and adjusting to a new school, and I mean, I had my first concert lined up to have my first kind of music played at University of Michigan was on March 14th.
Oh
And I'd
my.
written this piano quartet, and so I was really excited because it was like it was going to be my first kind of like student concert situation, and yeah, the timing of that was the Wednesday before um, that concert. Everything was kind of canceled, and actually I got the email that things were closing up while we were in the middle of rehearsing the piece, and I was actually playing piano.
Oh my gosh.
And so what I actually did, I ran out into the hall to just find whoever I could, and I found a professor named Renee Ruche, who had been my theory pedagogy professor last year, and she's just a wonderful professor. And I was like, do you want to hear some music, because we want to get the chance to perform this for someone? And she came in and sat in and was our one person audience, because we knew at that point it's like this concert isn't happening. And it was actually a really powerful experience, because we were all like suddenly very aware, like this is the last that we are going to be able to do this for a very long time. So it was a weird, it was definitely a weird rehearsal and a weird kind of concert experience.
Sorry, I'm just taking that in. That's really impactful.
It was heavy.
I mean that yeah, that's like that. I mean, because I remember what I was doing at that time, and that's like watching the oncoming like end of the world as you know it.
Yep.
And that is kind of what it felt like. But that might be one of the best stories I've heard so far in these interviews. Actually, um, wow, that's incredible. That I almost feel like that's like a scene from a documentary or a movie right there.
Right.
You know?
It felt like a movie. It felt like,
Yeah.
yeah, just one of those. And I think it was, there was a sudden awareness that of something historical was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and especially related related to music, because it was like pretty clear that it was going to take a long time for live music to kind of figure itself out in this new world. So yeah, it was a strange way for it to all suddenly become real for me. Um, but I think everybody has a story kind of like that with this pandemic.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, so walking back quite a few years, when did you discover? I asked this of all my guests. When did you discover that you wanted to become a composer?
Oh, that's a great question. I love asking people this question too, because I'm a teacher and
Mm-hmm.
I'm always trying to inspire my students to become composers. So it's like I like finding out what did it so that I can have more strategies. Um, it was actually, there's a so I started playing piano very young. My mom plays the piano, and we had a piano in the house. And earliest memories involve banging on it and making music on it, which was wonderful. And so even from a very early age, I remember making like little songs. A lot of them sounded like the Backstreet Boys, and probably my main influence of when I was 3. And but I remember the really strong moment was when I was a little bit older, and I had a teacher who, as a kind of listening assignment, made me take out a CD from the library of Stravinsky's ballets. And it was like, I think within maybe a minute of listening to Petrushka, which was the first ballet on the disc, I was just like, I I wanted to do that. I wanted to make music like that, and that was a really strong, influential moment for me. Was hearing that music for the first time, and yeah. So if I had to like pin it to one moment, it was listening to that piece.
Um, so you would say that Stravinsky was a major Stravinsky and the Backstreet Boys, two of your earliest
Yeah,
influences.
yeah, yeah. Basically, my music is Stravinsky meets the Backstreet Boys in every way possible. Um, yeah, I mean, and the thing was, I was playing piano, so I loved music already. I, you know, loved listening to Manhattan Transfer or the Beatles or Beethoven or Diana Ross, like whatever it was that my parents had as tapes and records and things like that. Um, but there was something about uh, Petrushka. I think what made me excited about it was maybe one of the more contemporary classical things that I had heard up till that moment,
Hmm.
and so it suddenly it created this connection that, like, okay, classical music is something that um, can sound new and different and exciting. Um, that that I think is why that moment maybe stuck out for me. But yeah, Stravinsky was a huge early influence. Copland, uh, things that I was playing in high school orchestra and youth symphony. I was just I was in all of it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how the things that you play, the music that you actually play as a musician, and your primary instrument is piano.
Yeah, piano, but also violin. It's kind of
Oh,
like
okay.
equal 50-50.
So
Yeah.
in orchestra, you were playing mostly violin then.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, it's funny how the music that you play in orchestra is kind of what influences what you're writing, right? Wouldn't you say?
It definitely has a strong influence, and I think it influences the way you write for orchestra also,
Yeah.
because you know what it's like to be there and be in rehearsal, and it's a great perspective to have. I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah. I remember the one orchestra piece that I had to write in undergrad. We were playing Mahler 1 and two pieces by Samuel Barber. Essay number 1, I believe,
Sure. Yeah.
and Toccata Festiva. And so the orchestra piece ended up sounding like a sort of a mismatch of Mahler 1 and Barber's essay.
Sounds
um,
cool.
I liked it. It was cool. It's the one I want to write more orchestra music, but I just haven't had an opportunity to really do that.
I
But
think
so
if you add some Backstreet Boys to the mix,
yeah.
then you've got the perfect piece.
See, you say that, and now I'm gonna go do that. And so as you started to, as you grew older and because I can definitely hear the influence of Copeland in your music. Uh, I mean, I can hear it a little bit in Distant Sea, uh, but Distant Sea is really sort of one of your more, well, I mean, it's a very mature piece. It definitely sounds original. I don't know a lot of your music, but it's like, okay, that's what, it sounds like Michael Kropf. Um, what and like I said, that video is such a wonderfully well produced It's a video. It's one of the more successful sort of remotely recorded videos I've seen. Did you compose that piece specifically for that remote medium, or was it written beforehand and then adapted?
Yeah, that was definitely a beforehand thing. That was something that I started working on when I got to University of Michigan. And actually, Matt Albert, he's the head of chamber music program, um, and he's good friends with my teacher Christy Custer. He had actually Christy does this wonderful thing where like we'll be in the middle of the lesson, and she'll be like, hold on a second, she'll run out of the room and she'll like grab Matt to like get his feedback on certain string writing, or like, how do you think Michael should notate this? So he had actually been he had seen the piece a bit. And so when I finished it, which was maybe 3 or 4 weeks before the pandemic hit, I sent it to him, it just in its kind of finished form, because I wanted him to see what had gone on with it. But yeah, my plan was to find put together an orchestra. Me and another composer at the University of Michigan were actually planning on like forming our own student string orchestra and doing a concert, and we were really excited about that. So that was initially what it was going to be for. But then Matt, about a week after we went online, called me and was like, I need to do something, and I've never done anything like this before, but how would you feel about us trying to do distancy as
Yeah.
a distanced kind of recording? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So it I think it actually worked really well for that medium, and especially with the all of the credit for the quality of the video and the performance and everything goes to Matt Albert, because he really led the entire process. I did very little. I mixed the audio at the end, and that was really all I did. We brainstormed together about how to do it, and I did some input, but he really kind of ran the process and did a wonderful job, considering it was like one of the first things that I saw online recorded in this way.
Yeah, I don't know him that well, but I did get to meet him at Meadows a few times, and uh, that sounds exactly like him. You know, the kind of like, we're gonna do it. We're just brute force and let's go make it happen. You know, it's very much a force of nature in that way. He's yeah, he's great to work in the company of, even, what when you were writing it, because it was prior to the pandemic that you were writing it. Um, what was it? Is it about anything? Or is it, what is the piece about?
Sure. It it was definitely one of these pieces that I just started with music, and I was probably feeling a certain way, and kind of what it maybe was about became clearer as I kept writing.
Mm-hmm.
But so I really loved living in San Francisco. I lived there for 5 years, and I'm from Connecticut originally. And living in San Francisco it felt like coming home somehow. It would just the place really resonates with me, and the West Coast in general. And so when I moved to Michigan, which I find Michigan to be extremely beautiful, and like it has so much wonderful craft alcohol and restaurants and beautiful forests and Great Lakes, which are incredible. And so all of these things I've really learned to love and appreciate. But when I first got to Michigan after living in San Francisco, I was like having these weird dreams about the Pacific Ocean, and it was I really it just felt so far away, and that made me very kind of melancholy. And so that's what I named the piece after that kind of emotional um, feeling, of just kind of like a, I guess, an ode to this connection that I still felt. Um, to that place and that part of my life, and just the kind of the weirdness of the transition and that now being a past part of my life. I think that's kind of the emotion that was going on when I was writing this piece. That type of reflection, and then of course I started to notice like there are lots of waves like lapping on shores and other types of visual things that are happening in the music that I did not have happen on purpose, but I think just came out of that. Um, so yeah, that's my my one sentence explanation.
That's really cool. I mean, I all of your music and other things you've talked about always seem to have a very very important story behind them. And you say in your biography that your music focuses on emotion. Is that one of the main goals, or one of your main focuses in your music is conveying emotion?
Yeah, I definitely that's an interesting question. I think there's something I like for my music to have a certain kind of immersive quality, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the way that music can put you into an immersive kind of feeling state is really interesting. So I definitely find with with my music that I tend to gravitate towards music that does that. Like, there's some music that you hear it and it sounds like you're listening to the universe, and then there's some music that is like a very serious opera drama. It just sounds like totally like an emotional or like dramatic type of thing. And I kind of actually like to combine those two things, kind of like the bigger picture and the smaller picture, um, into the same canvas. So yeah, it's this kind of thing of like my music won't specifically be about the ocean, but it might be about the way the ocean makes me feel,
Right.
or the way the context of that feeling in a time in my life at a certain moment. And I think it's important, like psychologically, for me, to be able to express those feelings and to be able to like um, uh, explore them through music. So I definitely do like there to be an emotional component just for me. It the way it makes other people feel, maybe it could be different, and that's fine. But I think for me it needs to have that resonance.
Certainly. Where do you find that your music kind of fits into we often think of music in this sort of binary relationship of program music or absolute
Oh
music.
yeah.
Program music being, of course, music that's quote unquote about something. It has a quote program to it, or absolute music where it's just about the music. For my listeners who might not know those terms, do you put much stock in that binary relationship, or do you feel like it's really a multiplicity of possibilities, or?
Yeah, I think music is always a multiplicity of possibilities, and there's no single thing that music does
Mm-hmm.
for every single person all the time. And and it the one thing that I do think is is something that interests me about music is the way it connects to a kind of subconscious space, and and I think that can happen in, with or without a program. A program is just another element that might act in concert with some other things that are going on. I tend to in my composing not be super programmy, because I tend to get really distracted by um, the just kind of the nuts and bolts, and just follow those through without really conceptualizing them too much in terms of like what each thing means. Um, I definitely go a lot by instinct, and so in that way, I probably am less likely to do program types of things, even though I do like for there to be stories surrounding the pieces. I think those can be helpful and interesting, and there's always a narrative going on in terms of my life and like the world around me that might surround a piece. But yeah, I guess I don't tend as much to be like, and this part of the piece represents this narrative thing.
Right. Not sort of like Mickey Mousing it, and
Yeah,
um, I I find my music kind of fits into that category as well.
sure.
Do you have a favorite instrumentation?
Yeah, I this is a thing that, I mean, it's one of the reasons I wrote this string orchestra piece was because really always wanted to do it, and I'd never gotten the chance to do it. So I was like, I'm in school, I'm going to do exactly what I want, and I want to do string orchestra. And I'm currently working on a violin concerto and a violin sonata, and maybe I wrote a string quartet. Like, I definitely gravitate towards strings a lot. I play the violin. There's a reason I play the violin, is because I really love how it sounds. I really love the things it can do musically and expressively. So I definitely gravitate towards strings. Um, that being said, I just finished a saxophone piano piece, and I think saxophone is like uh, this being my first opportunity to work with classical saxophone, and the University of Michigan just has incredible saxophone players. Just like they're they're so good, and that experience made me be like, I think I can add saxophone to like my list of favorite instruments as well. Um, but yeah, it's I gravitate towards those things, but I love lots of different types of instruments.
I like saxophone too. It has that kind of breathy quality to it. Of course, I have more of a I would almost say I have more of a jazz background, a little bit
Sure.
than a classical background, and so I'm more interested in jazz saxophone. But yeah, I haven't had a chance to really write for saxophone, unfortunately. But I'm glad that you came to love saxophone too. You wrote a piece called Juke, I think in 2014 or 2015.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's, if I can remember correctly, it's on your website. It's piano, marimba. Is there a violin in there?
Violin.
Violin,
Yeah.
piano. Yeah, it's a trio: piano, marimba, and violin.
Yeah.
And I listened to it while I was researching your music, and I love that piece. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to play it sometime. Would you be interested in arranging it for splitting the violin part into oboe and cello by chance?
Yeah, sure. I think that could work really well. Um, it's one of those pieces that I think it could have some flexibility to it. That piece was such a funny instrumentation for me, and when I heard it, I was like, oh wow, the marimba is really loud,
Yeah,
and
we tend to
but
be
it
that
was
way.
cool. Yeah, and it's cool because you like combine the marimba with the piano, and it kind of creates like a super piano. So
Yes.
I really dug it.
Yeah, it adds this. It adds well, not to be too pedestrian, but it adds an added percussiveness to it, right? Every piano kind of makes the piano sound like everything's an accent almost.
Yeah.
Very staccato, but it can also be more flowy. How did that piece come about? Because you wrote that, I'm gonna guess, in either master's or undergrad.
So yeah, that was during masters,
Mm-hmm.
and that I actually wrote that for I did the Walden School Creative Musicians Retreat,
Yeah.
which is an incredible summer creative musicians program that's about like a week and a half long in New Hampshire, and it's just this wonderful summer program, and yeah, it was written kind of for that festival, but then has been performed a couple of times since. Um, and yeah, I think it was one of those things where they were like, "Here's some instruments you could
Mm-hmm.
write for. Like, pick some instruments," and I
Yeah.
just picked those three.
Okay, so you actually were able to pick the instrumentation.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why I did that, but I just did. I was like, I don't know where it was a while ago.
It's a very good instrumentation.
Yeah.
So often vibraphone is paired with piano,
Yeah.
because they have a similar well, they sort of have a similar tone quality, but they also have a similar okay, what's the word I'm looking for? Durational quality
Yeah.
to all of the, in with both piano and vibraphone both have a pedal, and so you can really set the duration of each note very
Yeah.
specifically as a performer, and so the pianist and the vibraphonist can really line up with that, which
Hmm.
you can't do so much with marimba, but who cares? Like it still
Yeah.
it still works really well, and I don't hear enough piano and marimba paired together. Um,
Yeah.
do you listen to any? This is total tangent. Do you listen to any Pat Metheny by chance?
I was just literally told to listen to Pat Metheny. I know that I've heard Pat Metheny
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in the sometime in my life, and I know that I've done that. And I was just actually told to listen to Pat Metheny in connection with like this weird piano improvisation thing that I did. So like
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely going to do my Pat Metheny homework.
Yeah. Yeah. Hie thee to a music store, and as John Cage once said,
Yeah.
and go listen to Pat Metheny. I would check out. I can't get enough of a particular track of his called Orchestral,
Mm.
which I don't want to talk too much about it, but basically he created. It's a solo album, but he got some engineers together to hook up. Somehow they hooked it up so that he can control a host of other instruments using his guitar
Cool.
with almost no delay. And so he'll be playing along with like a marimba at the exact same time. So it's an actual marimba. It's not a MIDI
Yeah.
marimba, and
Yeah.
it's a marimba with like 88, or not 88, but like every bar has a mallet suspended over it, controlled by a robotic arm. And if he hits an A, it hits an A, and he can so he can do these crazy all on the guitar, which you can't really do on marimba very easily, but the marimba can because it just has all these mallets everywhere, right? But Orchestrion is like this 17-minute masterpiece.
Hmm.
Go check it out. Um, I felt like I heard. I mentioned Pat Metheny because of the marimba piano
Yeah.
combination. But in Juke, I felt like I heard a bit of and I'm biased, but a Steve Reich influence.
Yeah, probably. There's probably a Steve Reich influence going on at any music that I'm writing around that time, because it's like, I was in what was I listening to at that time? Probably the 5x2 or 2x5,
Two times
the
five, yeah.
2x5, yeah,
Yeah.
which is a really cool piece, Steve Reich piece for like rock band.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's in there a little bit for sure.
And at that time, let's see, you would have been at the conservatory. Yeah, around that time he was actually writing I think his music was being performed out there excuse me, quite a bit
Yeah.
around
And
twenty-sixteen.
I think I'd gone to NYU, and you're in like downtown New York, so
You're in his
you've got a lot
territory.
of you're on that turf. And then I was at, I think that year in San Francisco Conservatory, had taken a minimalist
Mm.
class, where we listened to a lot of Julia Wolf and Steve Reich and that kind of thing. So I'm sure that was seeping in there.
What other influences? Because you'd mentioned the Backstreet Boys and Stravinsky, but as you grew older, what other influences started to really play on your creative voice?
Yeah, I definitely had a very extended middle school Radiohead moment that because just teenager feelings. What can you do?
Sure.
And also like teenager feelings, but also composer feelings
Yeah.
is there's that's perfect for Radiohead. Um, more lately, I've really gotten into Bjork. I just love the way she, like, I think you can, when I listen to Distant Sea now, I hear like a lot of like me trying to comprehend Bjork's use of rhythm a little bit, and
Yes.
it's just, and just the way she does melody. Um, I had a huge like John Adams epiphany when I was in high school. I was on some road trip and like listened to the whole of Harmonium, and that was like also one of these big listening experience moments where I was really taken with it. Lately, uh, yeah, I'm trying to think of some more recent ones. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're all influenced by so many different things. Radiohead is also a huge influence of one of our other mutual teachers, Lane. Because you were at EMA at one point, right? You went to
That's
EMA.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of our mutual teachers, Lane Harder, who at this point
That would
in
make
the
sense.
podcast, we keep it's sort of an inside joke now that amongst the team that whenever I interview a composer or musician, I have to mention Lane Harder at least once in the course of an episode. I've yet to interview him. I need to do that pretty soon, I guess. But yeah, you were in when did you go to EMA? Was that 2017? I think.
Oh no, it's got to be earlier because I think it was 2013.
Okay.
Because that's where I met David Conte, who
Mm-hmm.
is my teacher and mentor at San Francisco Conservatory. Um, so yeah, that I think that was 2013. Um, that was a ton of fun.
Very very long time ago.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
was that connection with David Conte why what kind of led you to go to the San Francisco Conservatory?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was just an immediate like mentorship connection, and it, he really understood my music on a deep level, and like offered me some very tangible um goals and skills to kind of work towards, and he's just a really consummate pedagogue and pedagogue
Pedagogue? I don't know.
pedagogue
Pedagogue?
pedagogue.
Pedagogue.
I feel like teacher is too little of a word for David Conte because he's just so incredible at teaching music, and specifically music in the way that I needed to be taught at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, so yeah, I had lessons with him there, and then from there went to San Francisco Conservatory, and that was a wonderful experience.
You've gone to so many different festivals and at this point, several different schools, and you've won quite a few competitions. Or you've at least participated in quite a few competitions. Do you enjoy the competitive aspect of, do you enjoy
No.
really?
I mean, I don't think so. I think when you're just starting out in music school, it's like it's kind of fun to send things off, but I'm way more excited when someone on an individual level just connects with my music. I think that's so much more meaningful because then you get to like, if a musician asks me to write something for them, or even just an audience member at a concert tells me that they liked a piece, that's like I get so much more endorphins from that
Mm-hmm.
than a kind of anonymous like committee. Like, and it's not that it's not great, but it's just because you don't have that one-on-one kind of feeling. And I also think there's something about competitions and just the nature of committees that choose things, that you could have one person on the committee really love something and another person on the committee really hate something, and that will can those things will cancel each other out. And I think it's really cool to write music that someone can really like, even if someone else really dislikes it. And I think most composers feel that way. So yeah, the competitiveness, it's never been something that I've really found that fun. But that being said, it's a part of the field, and I've really appreciated all of the times that I've been in a competitive situation that has led to me having an opportunity or like a music making opportunity.
Yeah, that was going to be part of my question is, if you enjoyed it and that's why you did it because you enjoyed that aspect of it, or if it's because, like, well, this is one of sort of the necessary evils of what we have to do as composers in this country, in order to gain the kind of opportunities that we want.
Yeah. And I think it's also very connected with like when you're a very young composer, or when you're in school, there are a lot of those opportunities out there, and it's the thing that you do. But I think the more as you kind of get older and you mature and develop, you learn about this other aspect of it, which is actually forging those personal connections. And I'm really glad that that other element of this field is there, because I find that element much more personally
Yeah,
satisfying.
that very much aligns with sort of Open Parameters' mission is making developing a network and all these personal connections, because that's really all that, I mean, there was some talk of submitting to competitions, and we were always notified of competitions that we were uh, able to submit to while at Meadows in undergrad, and there was like some mild pressure from, but not like serious pressure to like submit, um, and really a lot of Meadows was about nurturing your own community of connections and networks that you could get your music out there, and it was really all about personal connection, and it, not to get too opinionated, but it's a, I lament the fact a little bit that competitions are not only such a part of like our craft in America and abroad, um, but also just a part of culture in at the macro, of just like
Yeah,
everything has to
yeah,
be a competition. Music should never be a competition.
yeah,
Now people are gonna say that that's not right, because like how else do auditions or competitions, but
yeah, yeah.
in terms of assigning like value to a particular piece.
Yeah, it's I think of a lot of the people who have influenced me, um and music that I find impactful, and it's usually not like the competition winning stuff.
Right.
And so I just to even just put it on a subjective personal level, like it just, whatever that infrastructure is there for, it doesn't always really serve my needs as a listener. So um I think it's a little different with like composition versus performance, because it's like there are some more objective things you can pin down. It's like that violinist can play more notes in 1 second than this other violinist, but this other violinist can play louder than
Yeah.
you can point to these specific things. And I think I mean I was and still am a violinist, and I hated the competitive nature of that as well. And I think probably mature violinists find the same thing of just, it's not all about competing in every aspect, but it's about finding what's the thing that you do well and how do you become better at that thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, very much we could have a whole panel debate and discussion on the necessity or the value of competitions in the arts at all.
Hmm.
Um, and to say nothing of the gatekeeping aspect,
Yeah.
of the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so you mentioned that you're a teacher. Do you teach
Yes.
piano and violin, or do you also teach composition?
Yeah, I teach piano, violin, composition, musicianship. Actually, the Walden School that I mentioned, I teach composition and musicianship, and sometimes a film scoring class during the
Oh,
summer
no way.
for. Uh, I teach that at the Young Musicians Retreat, which is or not Young Musicians Retreat. Young Musicians Program, YMP. It's like a 5 week long camp, and it's the most fun. It's exactly like the CMR, but extended out and more camp focused, and that's been an incredible um, thing to be able to teach there. And I've also, as a part of my degree here at University of Michigan, have been teaching musicianship and theory courses um, this year, all online. But yeah, the teaching is a huge part of what I do, and the way I connect with like the musical world.
The Walden, I'm sorry, you said the Walden Festival, the Walden,
The Walden School,
Walden
yes, the
School.
Walden School.
Is that a Henry David Thoreau reference, and is that located anywhere near that? Near.
It's not near. It's not near. It's in New Hampshire, so it's
Okay.
not near the. It's not near the act, but I'm sure it is.
Hmm.
Um, I. It's been going on for a long time, but I think knowing what I know about the camp, that's probably where the reference is coming from.
What advice would you give to young composers who are maybe in high school just starting out, and they might be thinking, "How do I do this? How do I get better at this? What educational resources do I, what do I do?"
I think it depends on the student and the type of advice that they're seeking and the things that they're already thinking about. You know, if someone is looking into learning more about music, I would say um, work on finding a teacher who you really connect with. It can mean so much to have a teacher who gets where you're coming from, or really knows how to teach. And that's not to say that you need to find like the one teacher who's going to be the perfect teacher. Every teacher offers something different, and sometimes the thing that they're offering will help you, and sometimes it doesn't really overlap with what you're interested in.
Sure.
But I think yeah, I think it depends on where that student is and what they're interested in. I'm trying to think if I have a more definitive answer than that. Um, it's yeah, it's tough to it's tough to know exactly the advice to give
Absolutely.
with this kind of question.
Yeah, because it is dependent upon the student. I had a student come
Yeah.
up. I taught for a short period of time too, and I had a student come up to me, and he asked me, Mr. Cook, how do I become a freelancer? He was specifically
Interesting.
trying
Yeah.
to learn how to become a freelancer, and I told him like, don't God, please God, do something else. When make
Yeah.
some money, and I, because I'm at that point I was very jaded about the music industry even before the pandemic, and I told him, I
Yeah.
said, well, I mean, like, I'm not going to tell you not to become a freelancer, but do you have any other interests in life that would make you a more stable income? Because being a freelancer is not
Yeah.
a stable income, and he was also having the pressure from his father, who wanted him to
Yeah.
go be an engineer, and I told
Yeah.
him straight up, I said, well, dude, like, if you want to keep playing music, you can put yourself through engineering school and get a music degree simultaneously.
Oh
They'll
yeah.
they'll give you ton, go tell your father, like, you know, that he can you can get a really good scholarship, playing bassoon,
Yeah.
uh, and studying engineering. And I don't know where he is now. He was one of my high school students. Hopefully, who knows, because he would have been starting college right at the beginning of the pandemic, but
Yeah.
it's very
Oof.
difficult. Yeah. You know.
I
Mhm.
think that's good advice. And yeah, with regards to like the freelancer thing, I mean, it's like it's one of those things that there's no like set path that will get you there,
Yeah.
and most people don't really get there, and it's and that's fine. It's like um it's I don't think a ton of people who kind of stay in composing like go into it to like have like a very steady I like it's when people want to get paid to write music, it's because they want more time to write music. So
Right.
whatever you need to do to like buy that time for yourself, that's kind of the mindset that I usually am in it with. Is just like it's nice when I have that luxury, but it is a luxury, and it's not something that's kind of, if you even look at composers that you've been influenced by in history, or artists, like, most of them were not did not have this as like their day job where they were getting
Yeah.
a really consistent stream. And I think that's really frustrating, and I wish we lived in a society where you did get a consistent stream of income for creating art, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the other goals of Open Parameter, to provide that as best as possible, or to create opportunities for that as much as possible through the I'm building an army, essentially.
Yeah.
Welcome to the army, Michael. And exactly what you said. It's not always we always think of these composers of just like that's what they did, and uh, uh, it used to, the major composers of the classical and romantic era, they were usually attached to either a king or a nobleman or church, and that's how they were able to subsist and just do that. And that was But like Steve Reich and Philip Glass had a moving company in New York. They were also, like, I think Philip Glass was a taxi cab driver at one point, or Steve Reich was a taxi cab driver at one
Yep.
point. Um, John Cage often said that he was unemployed, and when he needed he's like, I'm unemployed, and when he needed a job, he would take one, as a dishwasher or something, just to and then he would have some time to compose.
Yeah.
That kind of still exists in the sense of, if you're attached to a university, then you have certain resources allocated to you. But as I'm sure did you have the experience of when you left undergrad or left your master's degree and had a period of time where you weren't in school, suddenly you were like, oh wow, all of the resources I had available to me are just gone.
You know, it's funny because I went right from undergrad to grad school at San Francisco Conservatory, and I mean, I tell everyone this, like, everyone's very afraid of the city of San Francisco because you read headlines about how expensive it is, and all that. But it's like, I graduated from San Francisco Conservatory, and there is such a need for like music teachers and music administrators and choral directors, and like, I mean, like, every kind of music related position, or any kind of position that's not a six-figure position, I've kind of found in that city, is like really looking for people. So
Yeah,
it was a great experience because I left school and was like, wait a second, like, this is fine. I didn't fall off the face of the earth, and I can pay rent and support myself. And I went down the teaching route because it's something that I felt I was pretty good at and really enjoyed. But I one of my classmates is now heads a department at the San Francisco Symphony, doing things like what you're doing, in terms of helping larger musical organizations run. Um, I know someone else who started conducting the San Francisco Girls Choir, um, and like kind of cobbling together many other types of things. And that was really, it was just really good for me to experience that. I think that's not everyone's experience everywhere. I think in like New York, things are much more competitive, so it's
yeah,
much harder. But what that taught me is that not every single musician or composer needs to be in the same place. Actually, there's a need for us everywhere, and because people like music everywhere, and so that my feeling is that we should be going out and like supporting communities that we're really connected to, um, and and thinking of ourselves as people who are doing a service for that place,
yeah,
and creating a life around that, as opposed to city X or city Y is like the most prestigious place to be, or getting university job is the like biggest prize I can get, so I'm just going to try to do that thing. I think there
right.
are many different paths.
Yeah, because then you can work yourself into a situation of like, well, if I don't make it big in X city, or I don't get that university job, I failed as an artist, and that's absurd. Exactly with like what you said. It's interesting that you say that there's a lot of opportunities for music administration and teaching in San Francisco, because I've heard the opposite about LA. Now I've heard the opposite about LA from exactly two people before, so I don't. That's very anecdotal, but yeah, I've heard kind of mixed information about that area of California
Yeah.
as being having opportunities or having no opportunities. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know as much about I only visited once
Hmm.
when I was in California, but it seems like there's a lot of like new music stuff
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on there. Um, but I don't, maybe all the Brooklynites moved to LA, which is why it's now hard to get a job in LA.
Oh, that's funny. So aside from the Backstreet Boys, coming full circle, what's an influence, musical or otherwise, of yours that might surprise people? That would be like, really? That's something he's interested in, and
This is probably going to start surprising people less because I I'm probably going to like make pieces with like lame scientific titles, but like I took a geology class this semester,
mm-hmm.
and I've uh, always been really interested in geology, and I took up gold panning as a hobby while I was in California,
Of course.
and yeah, I just think it's like it gives me so much energy, and I think it's a similar energy that I'm taking the music stuff from. So yeah, that's probably that I would love nothing more on my day off than to like gold panning in some mountain stream somewhere. That's probably the slightly surprising thing. It's a lot like composing actually, if you think about it, because
Gold
you're like
panning is.
gold. Yeah, you're gold pan. You're like you're working with your musical material, trying to like find sparkly things that you want to keep, and you just have to like. It's uncomfortable. You're like crouched over. I don't know. There's there's some there's some crossover there, I'm
No,
sure.
that's a great musical analogy.
Yeah.
Lane Harder once said that the act of music composition was like archaeology, and the initial idea that you get is like the X-ray scan under the
Yeah.
ground, and then the actual act of it is like suddenly your X-ray scanning machine just like explodes, and
Yeah.
then the rest of the act is just like, okay, what the hell did I just see? Now I have to
Yeah.
put that together, and it's always an imperfect uh, image that you produce afterwards. But no, I love that idea
Yeah.
of gold panning, of being in a very uncomfortable position, because it is. People don't. I think people don't always realize how uncomfortable, actually composing can be,
Yeah.
unless you can pull off composing outside, like I don't know, Strauss or some person,
Yeah.
and uh, it can, a lot of times we spend our hours in a dark room with a piano, and it's, and we don't see the sun all the time.
Yep.
So, well, Michael, it's been fantastic talking with you. It's great to catch up with you and see you again, and to add you to my open parameter army.
Yes.
Uh, so thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Del. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing, and I'm really excited to like see where this whole project goes.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Open Parameter Podcast. Go check out our other projects like Open Parameter Ensemble and Open Parameter Hub at openparameter.net. Join our growing community of artists and patrons and help us fund those projects by becoming a supporting member at openparameter.net/support. Your generous donations will allow us to commission composers to write new music, commission artists to make new works of art, and provide paid performance opportunities for local North Texas musicians. Open Parameter is a sponsored project of Fractured Atlas, a nonprofit arts service organization. Contributions for the charitable purposes of Open Parameter must be made payable to Fractured Atlas only, and are tax-deductible to the extent permitted by law. Help support our community of artists and musicians today by going to openparameter.net/support and clicking on Donate Now. I'm Del Cook, Creative Director of Open Parameter. Abby Hawthorne is our music consultant and writer, Hannah Hughes is our graphic designer, and Stajara Danilescu is our visual and interactive media consultant. From all four of us here at Open Parameter, thank you so much for listening today. Please tune in again next week.